Welcome into part two of our conversation with Mike Moran. He is known as Killer from the Texas Hangmen, Mike Richards. We had so much fun talking to him that, as you just heard at the end of last week's show, it was kind of decided spur of the moment by Mick Karch making the executive decision that we were going to take a part two, and I think that was the right call. Let's go ahead and bring in Mick and Mike. Guys, I mean, for part one was unbelievably well received. I'm really happy, and we haven't even gotten to some of the good stuff. So I want to start it off right here, Mike. We're going to start off with a bang. Tell me the Michael Hayes story.
Oh, goodness. We're going to start out with a shit story. All right. Well, so Michael Hayes and I had worked him with Kenny J as the Freebirds, but for whatever reason at the studio in Minneapolis, they decided to put me with Michael Hayes in the singles. And he used to do this finish where he would do this, where he'd hit his chest and he'd punch you. Well, when he punched you, he would really punch you right in the face. And he hit me so damn hard that when I fell back, I shit my pants. So, and this is on TV. Now, you can't see it there, because I had underwear on. So I come back and I pull Frankie DeFalco to the side, who's a good friend of mine, and I go, bro, I shit my pants. He's like, what are you going to do? You got another match. I go, I don't know. So I go into the bathroom, show Frankie. He goes, oh, my God. In my defense, it wasn't a full shit. It was more like a shard on steroids. It was, wasn't all there. But anyway, too much. I took my underwear off. I tried to rinse them off in the sink. Didn't work. So I just took my underwear and I put them in the garbage can. And I always wondered, did Verne get a call a couple days later saying, hey, one of your wrestlers put some shitty underwear in the garbage? But anyway, so I went back out the next match, free balling, commando, first time ever. And shit happens.
Free birds, free balling, huh?
Yes.
Free ball because of the free birds.
Free birds, yeah.
Did he know what happened, like in the middle of the, like right then and there? Did he know what happened?
I'm sure when he covered me, he was probably like, it smells a little shitty in here, but what are you going to do? I mean, but he didn't say anything. I walked back quietly. I didn't want anyone to know. I was a little embarrassed. First time
it was probably the first time that Dave Meltzer actually said this match is the shits.
It might have been, and he would have been very cool.
That 4-star rating, and then you go to the shits.
So I would have given you a 2-star rating.
I think it was a minus 5-star rating after that shit show. Yeah.
Oh, I love it. All right. Speaking of Verne Gagne and those great old enhancement days, we've talked about the difference between enhancement talent, mid-card guys, main event guys. You really you kind of skyrocketed. It was almost an overnight situation with the AWA. Not that you didn't pay your dues
right
for a long time, but in terms of where you were on the roster, you went from enhancement to teaming up with Rick as the Texas Hangmen.
Yep.
How did that feel? How did that come about? Because that's a rarity when guys are elevated that fast.
Well, to me, it really was, because the only time I can think of anything even similar was when Paul Pershman, who was a job guy for AWA, became Buddy Rose.
Right.
But yeah, but you got to keep in mind, we were jobbers from 1983 to 1988. And then in 1989 is when we got our shot as the Hangman. So yeah, it was shocking, but at the same time, I think Greg just really realized that we had paid our dues. And you got to remember, we didn't only do jobs for Verne. For many years, we were doing jobs for WBE too, WF.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
There'd be times I'd be on TV as on WBE Superstars Challenge. I'd be on 3 times a weekend, sometimes getting my ass kicked. So how do you push a guy like that? You can't. That's why we had to wear the hoods. But I mean, I'd be wrestling Greg Valentine, Bad News Brown, One Man Gang, Killer Khan, all these guys from WBE, and then I'd be wrestling Colonel De Beers and Doug Summers and Roschke and all these guys. So yeah, it was really shocking that they even gave us a shot. But I really think it was because Greg felt we had paid our dues and we deserved at least a shot.
Did you guys say something, or did he come to you and say, hey, we think we're gonna give you this new gimmick and we're gonna give you this opportunity? Or I mean, how did that process come about?
Well, Chris, what happened is my partner Rick, he was doing the Texas Hangman on the Indies just by us, and he said to me, why don't you decide to do it with me? And I was like, you know what, I would love to. I was always a super huge fan of the mask guys. Super Destroyer Mark II was my favorite grade.
Oh, wow.
Slaughter. Yeah. And so I was obsessed with masks. I remember making masks when I was 12 years old in my basement. And so when he said, "You want to do this?" I'm like, "Yes, let's do it." We did it. It was great. We put some pictures together. Rick brought them to Greg and said, "Hey, would you consider this?" And that's when he said, "I like you guys, and I think you deserve a shot, but maybe you should go to like USWA and get some more experience because, you guys haven't been teaming that long as the Hangmen. And then that way, if we bring you in, we can really do something." And we're like, "Okay, but we don't have any connection."
And that kind of brings me into my next question about going to the USWA, because I mean, that's, Jerry Lawler in that part of the country. I mean, that's Lawler country. But how much did the program and the opportunity to work with Bill Dundee and Jerry Lawler help you?
That was Greg's idea. He decided because just coincidentally, they were the tag team champions for AWA at the time, Dundee and Lawler. He said, "I'm going to put you guys at Whitewater." Mick, you know Whitewater.
Oh, do I ever?
And he said, "I'm going to put you with them in Whitewater as Mike Richards and Rick Gantner, and they can see them what you can do, and then maybe he'll consider bringing you guys in USWA." So we did this match, and I told Bill Dundee before the match, it was a live ESPN show or a taped ESPN show. I said, "I'm not comfortable doing this monkey flip that you want to do," because he wanted to lay on his back and push me forward rather than backwards, and I felt like I wouldn't get over. I mean, the guy's only 4 foot tall. I mean, truth be told. So he goes, "No, mate, I'll make sure you get over, blah, blah, blah." Well, of course, what happens is he goes to do it, and I land right on my head, right on TV.
Oh, God.
Knocked myself out for the first and only time in my career.
So that's it, right? I mean, that's the
Well,
end
no,
of
I
the-
get up and I start flopping around. I don't know why I was doing this, but I don't know if you've ever been knocked out. But when you're knocked out, you're in a dream sequence. And you're flipping around, and I ended up going out of the ring. Lawler brought me back in. He tried to cover me a couple of times. I kept kicking out for some reason. Then finally, he just picked me up in a power driver. He dropped me, and he goes, "Do not kick out." And I didn't kick out. But guess what? Horrible impression. We weren't going to get the job. But then surprisingly, what happened is 2 weeks later, he talked to Rick, my partner, and he said, "Come on down for a weekend." And we drove all the way to Memphis for a TV taping in that weekend and tried to give it a shot.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
I got a question about another team, but before I get there, you mentioned getting knocked out for the one and only time in your career. You're in La La Land. I was in Australia with Kamala, as a matter of fact.
Yeah.
And there was a guy, Rick Laribus, who is he's from Texas, and he's wrestled under different personas.
Okay.
And he was a heel. He was working as the Gladiator on this Australian tour, and he's working Hillbilly Cousin Luke. And Cousin Luke hit him with a clothesline coming off the ropes. And Rick did, the tailspin, and he also landed on his head. Well, everybody knew right away this is not good. And he stands up, and Luke looks at him like, "Oh, shit." And Rick Laribus is trying to walk a straight line to Cousin Luke, and he's not. He's like angled completely off to the side, like he's walking towards the turnbuckle. He had no idea where the hell he is. And instead of going into the finish, I think Luke put him in a front face lock for about the next 8 minutes, like the guy isn't dead enough already.
Right.
But that reminded me when you said
it's amazing when you get knocked out, you literally have no idea where you're at. You're like in the dream sequence. And finally, when I came to, and I heard Lawler say, "Do not kick out," it's finally when I said, "Okay," and I didn't kick out. But it's amazing how that happened. So what ended up happening, long story short, we went to USWA for the weekend, drove all the way down there, 12 hours. Rick had just gotten off his job. He had a stick shift vehicle. It was the only one that would make it. I was literally steering the car from the passenger side while he was sleeping for about 2 hours on the expressway. Thank God there was no cars. It was in the middle of the night because I didn't want to drive stick. So we get there and we're scheduled against the Rockers, Marty Jannetty. And I've known Marty since my first territory back in '83. So I thought, this is great. It was a 2 out of 3 fall match scheduled. So we start setting it up, and they go, the first fall, they're going to just get on you guys, and they're going to beat you in 30 seconds. They're going to come off the top with those big fists to me. And I'm like, that sucks because we're trying to make an impact, but okay. But they're like, second fall, you're going to get to shine. I'm like, okay, great. So we get out there. We do the first 30 seconds. They pin me. Now Frank and I are standing in the ring, and they go out to do an interview, and we're like, why are they doing an interview in the middle of a fall? And the camera guys are waving us, get the hell out of the ring. The fans are going, get the hell out of the ring, you jobbers. We got our masks on. We're looking around. We're going, no, there's another fall. Needless to say, there was not another fall. It was a commercial. They tell us to get the hell out of there before it comes live. We come back, and Marty's kind of smiling, goes, sorry, guys, it was a rib.
Oh man. Oh, God.
12 hours to get beat in 30 seconds.
You know, and Marty Jannetty, now that you bring him up, you talked to us kind of off screen about having Marty Jannetty, the legendary, you know, calm, cool, collected, never get in trouble, Marty Jannetty.
Yes, Marty Jannetty.
You got to talk about that.
Party Marty. So, this office, true story, this office was his bedroom back in, I think, 99 when we were both in WCW. I had known him since Kansas City. When I first went to, my first territory was for Bob Geigel in Kansas City.
Okay, yeah.
And Marty was there, is his first territory too. And he was teaming with a guy named Tommy Lane as the Uptown Boys, kind of a rockers, pre-rockers gimmick. Okay. Len Dent, the grappler, was the booker, and him and I became very good friends because he didn't like his partner, Tommy Lane. So we would drive in his white Mustang all over the territory. So we were very tight, and we've been friends for 40 years now. Anyways, long story short, in WCW, he needed a place to stay, and he came and moved in with me. This office, my appraisal office, was his bedroom. And let me tell you something. If these walls could talk.
Oh, God. Oh.
He would accidentally leave his bedroom door open sometimes during his matches with his females. And I would accidentally walk by sometimes and see the matches. And I'll tell you what, some of Marty's best matches were right here in this bedroom.
I would imagine.
And he did moves that you never saw on TV.
I'm quite sure of that, and I would bet you he always wanted to go at least 2 out of 3 falls.
He did.
What were they handicap matches? I mean, was it an over the top?
You know what? I never saw it. I would have loved to see a handicap match, but I did not see that. But I saw many singles matches where Marty always was on top. I mean over.
How many false finishes?
More than I could do.
No kicking out there.
Oh my God. Yeah. That's phenomenal.
It was a crazy year. Put it that way.
Yeah. Speaking of crazy, I want to go back earlier in the decade. I know how you transitioned from Marty Jannetty, but that was fabulous. Back to Twin Wars 90, where I believe it was Scott Norton and John Nord. Kind of take me through that match. The end of it, I guess, is really kind of what I want to know about, going back to the locker room. And apparently you had a tense conversation with one Verne Gagne.
Yeah, that was actually our last interaction with Verne. Working those guys, they were so big and so strong. The only objective for me and my partner was to survive. And so we're working them, and we kept taking them down and grabbing them and chin locks, blah, 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 just so we didn't get killed. And the finish was at the end, they chased us back to the dressing room. Scott said to me before the match, he goes, when we're chasing you, if we catch you, it's not going to be good. So needless to say, they were chasing us, and Frank wasn't running very fast. I was hitting him going, go, go, go. We were running for real. And we got back there, and the match was pretty good, I thought. But Verne didn't like it because we took him down so much, and they're so big. And he took us into the shower, and he chewed our asses out, no exaggeration, for 20 minutes. I mean, chewed us out about how these guys are so. But I felt like saying, Verne, these guys are scary, they're dangerous. But I didn't say that. I just listened to him, and respectfully, I mean, he was probably right, but it's easier said than done when you're in the ring with these big, giant guys, you know. But it was. I thought the match was pretty good. I don't know if you've ever seen it, but I thought it was pretty good. But yeah. My last interaction, sadly, with Verne was him giving us a probably earned ass, chewing us out.
I'm very well aware of last encounters with Verne Gagne and ass chewings and so on and so forth. You know, and I'm floored, Mike. I'm listening to you talk about how big and scary John Nord and Scott Norton were. I'm thinking in my mind that match had to be like a luchador match. I'm guessing with all the high-flying moves and all the coming off the top ropes and hurricane ranas and everything else, that just lit up the building.
Yeah, pretty much again, us just trying to survive. You've seen Scott Norton. That guy's got a head like a hippopotamus. I mean, he's huge, and he's so thick. I mean, the guy's like 4 feet thick. And John, John.
Oh, I know John.
Taking that boot to the face that he does.
Oh,
not fun. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, it was.
I love
by far one of the toughest teams we've ever worked with as far as just physicality.
Did you? I'm sorry. Did you like working with teams that were more physical like that, Mike, or did you kind of like it where maybe there wasn't so much as somebody laying it in?
We did like snug, because even as the Hangman later on, I always liked being snug because I felt that it's wrestling. Mm-hmm. But when you work a team like that, snug? it was a little. It was never too snug, but it wasn't as those guys weren't very mobile, so you couldn't do a lot of spots. You couldn't do a lot with them. But I mean, I enjoyed working them. They were great guys, very nice. But you just had to be very careful because they're so big they could hurt you accidentally.
I know that Scott Norton probably, what I understand, maybe this is just rumor, that when Scott Norton retired, they actually tore him down and built a stadium where he was standing. So, he was a big man.
He was a big man. Hey, I got to tell you a quick story.
Sure.
All right. So in WCW years later, Scott Norton's there, Brian Knobbs there. We flew on a plane to a show, all of us, for WCW. Eric Bischoff was there. We were all there. And Knobbs can get a little obnoxious. So he's fucking walking up and down sorry about the swearing. He's just walking up the plane. He's slapping us all in the head as he's walking up and down the plane. I'm sleeping. He's slapping. He's just waiting. He does it to Scott. Scott loses his mind. Scott grabs him, puts him in the bathroom of the plane and says, "If you come out, I'm going to beat the shit out of you." So poor Knobbs had to spend the whole flight sitting in the bathroom. Norton said, "If you come on, I'm going to kick your ass." It was so great. And we landed. Poor Knobbs comes in. Yeah. Norton was not a guy to play around with. He was
how do you get Knobbs in a bathroom on a plane anyway? I mean, how does that work? He
had to figure it out because he had to deal with Scott Norton.
Wow.
Fun.
Loving this. Looking back on your career with your various tag team partners, the Incarnations, you've talked about some of the teams that you work with. If you have a favorite and then a not so favorite team that you might have faced with any of your partners right off the top of your head.
Are you talking about AWA?
Just in general.
Okay. It was mostly me and Rick, and then eventually me and Tom. As far as favorites, I mean, I don't want to go non-AWA stuff, but there was a lot of guys that were non-AWA that we had great matches with. Invader and Carlos Colon and TNT. In USWA, we took the straps from Jeff Jarrett and Jerry Lawler. They were great to work. I mean, that's two of the best workers I've ever worked with. And we won the straps in Memphis from them. So there was a lot of really great tag teams. And then as a jobber, I worked Rock and Roll Express. I worked the Hart Foundation in WWE or WF. So many great tag teams. But I don't have a favorite necessarily. I could tell you guys I didn't like working with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, Thunder, which we've touched on off air. My God, honestly, as good as I had started to get at that time, I could not get a good match out of him. He didn't know how to lock up. He didn't know how to do anything. And here I am. You got to look at it from my point of view. I'm a guy who's not that great, but I'm pretty good at this point. Here I got to put this guy over who doesn't know a thing in at the showboat. You were there, Mick.
Oh, I was.
Horrible. Nice guy, but just terrible. Right? I didn't like working Kevin Kelly because he was so intense and he did hurt me. But I loved working Kurt. Kurt was the best. I loved Kurt as a person and as a wrestler. I wrestled him for Verne in the beginning days. I wrestled him later on in the days. I wrestled him in WWE. I wrestled him in WCW when they were doing that rap is crap gimmick thing going. It was great. I loved Kurt. When he passed, I was very sad. But he was the best, in my opinion. I love working Greg. A lot of people talk shit about Greg. But let me tell you something. That guy could go. And when he put that sleeper on you, I worked him at the show. When he put that sleeper on me, I damn near almost fell asleep. He wanted to be tough guy for a little guy. People underestimate him. They always talk all this shit about him because he was Verne's son. That guy was a tough athlete. He had played football in Minnesota. He was great. Was it Minnesota or Wyoming?
It was both.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he went from Minnesota to Wyoming, and talking about Greg, Bockwinkel used to say, wrestling Greg, it was like a night off, but it was so good.
He was
so smooth. Yeah.
Well, what was the perception of Greg in the locker room at that point? Even though he was Verne's son, had the respect of everybody in the locker room.
Dude, he was a cool guy. He wasn't like some weird nerd. He was a cool guy, and he ran the locker room great, and he was always fair. And I'm biased because he gave us our break, so I will always love Greg for that. But in my opinion, I think everybody respected him. He was very good.
I want to ask you about one of the teams that we hear about as being very rough, but if you're in the ring with the Road Warriors, and we hear about that Road Warrior pop, when you're in that building and you're in the ring, like, what is the reaction when you see them coming out and you're in the ring waiting for them?
Wrestled them in St. Paul at the Civic Center, and my partner and I literally said to each other as they were running to the ring to the Iron Man song, "Good luck." And we weren't kidding. Those big bastards came running to the ring, and we just braced ourselves, and they got on us, and then Hawk picked me up. He threw me up over his head. Normally I'd have to help. Didn't have to help. Throwing us around like we were rag dolls. And this is when they were kind of green still.
Okay.
And thank God they didn't hurt us. But, yeah, it was a very scary experience. And I got a little story about that. So that same day, their next match was against my partner, Rick. And guess who his partner was as a jobber? Rick Steiner. He was. Yeah, look it up.
Wow.
He
really?
was Rob Rick Steiner.
Yes.
His name is Rick Steiner. Him and my partner teamed up and got their asses kicked. So that just shows you pay your dues, and eventually look at the star Rick Gagne. Mm-hmm. I mean, I ended up wrestling him many times in WCW with his brother, but yeah, that just shows you that you pay your dues.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, it was the same day.
Wow.
Let's talk about Rick a little bit, because again, here's a successful tag team. And by the way, I want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned a couple of times that Greg came to you and, you guys have paid your dues and whatnot. Mm-hmm. I'm going to say this to you. A lot of guys paid their dues for a lot of years in the AWA. You were extremely talented, both of you. And Greg wasn't just tossing you a bone, and knowing the AWA hierarchy the way I do, if they didn't have all the confidence in the world in you guys, you would not have been elevated to that position. So I wouldn't shortchange yourself at all, buddy.
Well, thank you. I appreciate that. And when he gave us a shot, I think it was the right timing. Had he given us a shot years before, we would have never been ready for it. We were ready at that time, and he pushed us to the moon. I mean, we barely ever lost. I mean, it was a really good push, and that actually catapulted us to have a better career later on, because once AWA closed, we went to Puerto Rico, had a great run. Then we went to the USWA, had a great run. Both times we had straps in both those territories. So it was all due to Greg. But yes, I do feel that Greg saw that we were ready.
Yes.
And that we had paid our dues. And again, props to him. He didn't have to do that.
You know what's interesting too, and this is just kind of an aside. You talked about your affinity for masked men,
yes,
in business, and how you like, Super D2 and what have you. I was always a huge fan of the masked guys too. I mean, going way back.
Cool.
You were, for a long time, masked men meant something in wrestling.
Yes.
And then there was a lull where they didn't mean anything, where they were used,
right,
basically enhancement on TV, and then all of a sudden, the Texas Hangmen come back, and you're elevating the role of the masked man again. So again, it's testament to you, buddy. The talent level.
Thanks. And do you know, this is the truth? We wanted to go old school, and when we did the Hangman gimmick, we wore our hoods into the building. Didn't take them off the entire time until we left.
Not even in the locker room?
Not even in the locker room, swear to God. And it's funny because I ended up running into Curtis Hughes, who we had worked a bunch of times. Well, then later on, when I was in WCW, he was there. And somehow he heard I was one of the Texas Hangmen, and I was me and Mike now. And he goes, "Man, I always wondered what you look like." A lot of the guys we worked never even knew what we looked like because we never took our hoods off. Never. The entire time in the dressing room. We wanted to do old school gimmick. And so unless you knew it was Mike Richards, which of course some people did, but a lot of the guys, the newer guys, didn't.
Wow.
We were literally wrestling guys that never knew what we looked like.
That's phenomenal. I love
wow.
Old school.
Yeah, you talk about really protecting it.
We
Like-
really
and Verne must have loved that part of
He
it.
did love it. And Greg
Yeah.
didn't say anything. We literally never took the hoods off the entire time at all.
That's good for you. I love the kayfabe era. Nothing like it.
Yeah.
You know, we talked a lot about Rick. And, you know, eventually, you know, all good things come to an end one way or another. Take us through the split between you and Rick.
Well, what happened is, long story short, we went to Puerto Rico right after the AWA closed. I sent a tape down to Puerto Rico, not thinking I'm going to hear anything. I get a call from the Invader, the guy who, you know, him and Brody.
Yeah.
And he's like, Amigo, I want to bring you down. We have an idea for you we have an angle. We're bringing you in for 2 weeks. So we go down there for 2 weeks. And he offers us $1,000 a week deal. And we hang the Invader and we do our deal. And we stayed there for a long time, got the straps. It was one of the best times of my life. Dangerous at times. And I'll tell you this, I got a quick story. It's not AWA, but I want to tell you.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
So Bayamon is where him and Brody had their incident. We were literally in that same shower with Invader going over our finish for a match. Same shower. And the whole time I'm thinking to myself, is Invader thinking about this, or is it just me who's thinking about this?
Mhm.
But I got to say, Invader was always super nice to us. I don't know what happened between the two of them. But anyways, long story short, we went from Puerto Rico. Eric Embry was in the territory at the time. Him and a guy named Rick Valentine were teaming up. He went to USWA, and he said, when you guys are done in Puerto Rico, call me because I'm going to book for Jerry Lawler and Jeff Jarrett. So we called him after we finished up in Puerto Rico. We went to USWA. And that territory, we went from making $1,000 a week to $350 a week as champions. We beat Lawler and Jarrett at the Mid-South Coliseum for the straps. But instead of doing 400 miles a week, which we were doing in Puerto Rico because it's such a quick territory, we were doing 3,000 miles a week, making nothing, and it kind of pulled us apart.
Wow.
Yeah.
And that's just, I mean, that's incredible just to hear that. Cause I know you and I kind of, you know, talked about, we had kind of talked about that whole story about you being in the shower where, where the whole incident.
So surreal.
Can't imagine.
Yeah, it was really bizarre. And I got one quick Puerto Rico story to tell. It's not an AWA story, but it's a cool story.
You go ahead, Mel.
So one time, now this is years later, I was in Puerto Rico, and Dickie Murdoch was in the territory. And Dickie and I would travel together. We teamed up a few times, and he was a character, drinking guy, crazy guy. So Buddy Rogers, the nature boy Buddy Rogers, came into Puerto Rico with his son on vacation, and they showed up at Bayamon for the show, got announced and all that. Dickie says, hey, we're going to meet at Lupe's afterwards, which is a bar nearby where we all lived. He goes, why don't you come by and hang out with us for a while? I'm like, so I got to sit down. Now, I only stayed for about 15 minutes because I knew Dickie and Buddy wanted to do their thing. But I got to sit down with Dick Murdoch and Nature Boy Buddy Rogers for about 15 minutes and listen to these two guys talk. You talk about something I never in my wildest dreams would have imagined.
That's crazy.
It was one of the coolest moments of my career, and I wish I had a cell phone back then, but they didn't have them. Because I would have, God knows I would have taken a picture with Buddy Rogers.
You know, and I was going to say, for the younger fans out there who aren't familiar with Buddy Rogers,
oh my God,
you talk about one of the all-time greats, NWA champion, and
he was Ric Flair before Ric Flair.
Yeah, and you know what? And I told Bockwinkel too, and he always denied this. I said, Nick, I see such a similarity between you and Buddy Rogers.
No doubt.
Yep, and Nick would deny it. Yeah, well.
Nick was basically Buddy Rogers, you know, a superior version of Buddy Rogers.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. It was such a cool moment. Yeah.
To say a superior version of Buddy Rogers is, you know,
man.
That's incredible.
Nick was great. Yes.
Well, I guess I want to ask you about Brad Reagans. I know he's somebody that we'd like to get on the show sometime.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. Rumor has it he's kind of a strong fella. Right? I'm just throwing it out there. That's what the kids are talking about.
I mentioned this to Mick. We did a house show where it was It was Baron and Brad against me and my partner. And I screwed up a spot in the corner. I don't know why, but I did. And he grabbed me and he hooked my arms and he picked me up and he threw me over his head all the way to the next turnbuckle, like in a suplex. And I landed and I'm like, holy shit.
You weren't exactly a junior heavyweight, buddy.
I was 275, 280. I didn't have to help at all. This guy was so strong and such an athlete. He throws me over and then I don't even get up and he's already got me again. He goes, don't let that happen again. I didn't like that. I'm like, it won't happen again, Brad. Yeah. That was
don't let that happen again.
That was a bad dude.
You know, I heard, and for anybody who does not know Brad Ringens, you know, Greco-Roman wrestler, so I mean, his upper body strength was incredible. But, you know, you watch Brad on his promos, kind of a mild-mannered guy. His promos certainly weren't
very chill. Yeah.
Terrible. But I have heard that legendary Brad Ringens strength, and you solidified it.
Well, I'm sure you heard about the time he took Vader when Vader was green and his camp, and he threw him over the thing and threw him into like a porta potty. That guy, let me tell you something. Yeah, he did.
Brad Ringens threw Vader into a porta potty?
When he was Leon White,
yeah,
trying to learn, and Leon tried to shoot with him a little bit, and he picked him up and threw him over the top rope into a porta potty. You know that story, Mick. Yeah. By far one of the toughest guys I've ever been in the ring with. He looks so mild.
Yeah.
That guy is a killer. He's right up there with the Steiner brothers that I've wrestled with. They're killers too. You know, you get these guys that are just a next level. Yeah.
Well, and you know, when Brad was doing some of his training, Saito was his cohort a lot of times. So between the two of those guys.
Oh my God.
And as I told you in the first episode, Saito's a killer too.
Oh yeah. God, incredible. All right, Chris, I'm going to tee this up for you.
Yeah.
And you got to explain to Mike a little bit how we're really bending the rules because we like this guy.
Yeah, there is a certain individual that we don't normally even acknowledge on the show because of the piece of shit. Because of the piece of shit that he is.
I already know where you're with this.
But I know you've got a story that you want to tell about the boombox. So without that. Go ahead, Mike. It's
all right.
It's yours. It's all yours.
So long story short, Nacho Barrera used to run a show in Ashleypin, Wisconsin. Him and the Luchas would come in for years and do like a singles and tags, whatever. He eventually gave it to me because he didn't want to do it anymore. So one of the first years, I brought in Buck Zumhoff. And this is back before cell phones. So I get a call on my home phone, 5 hours before the show, and I hear hello, and I go, you have a collect call from, and then you hear rock and roll, which is his voice. And I accept the call. So I accept it. He goes, hey, brother, I haven't showered in a while. I'm a little ripe. Do you have like a garden hose or something you can put at the arena at the show? Because I'm not, smelling too good. And I'm like, oh, geez, I'll find something. And he goes, I'm going to be a little late too. And so he shows up in his van about 20, 30 minutes late. Stinks like hell. I give him the garden hose. He's out in the back spraying himself off. Yeah. And then he's the main event of the show. And in intermission, he's walking around. He had somehow printed out pictures on a Xerox machine of Hulk Hogan. And he's walking around in the stands. And this Ashman show was about 2,000 people there. It was a fair, and it was a big deal. And he's going, gas money. I need gas money. And he's selling Hulk Hogan Xerox copies for gas money. Yeah.
What? Everything that you have said, including how about the stink and needing gas money and everything else, is it fits. It's all.
It fits the whole. Meanwhile, he's where he needs to be. But I never booked him again after that. And I didn't like working Buck. Truth be told, that was one guy. That's another guy I didn't like working. One time, me and Rick did a house show for Verne. We had to drive 16 hours to North Dakota for $150.
Oh.
We were literally slapping our faces on the way home because we couldn't stay awake. And we had to work Buck and Baron. And Buck was so difficult to work with. He was clumsy, in my opinion. He was clumsy, and he was just hard to work with. I always wondered how he got the push he did, but whatever.
Well, the story that I've been told, and then we will get off of this guy as quick as possible. was that the one who actually said, "I will work with this kid and get him over," was Bobby Heenan.
Oh, okay. And they had a great angle.
Yeah, they had a great angle, and God bless Bobby for all the good he did in the business. That might have been one of his missteps. And again, we're not going to talk about this guy.
He doesn't even deserve it, but that is a funny story.
Yeah, and another story that will kind of piggyback on what you said. Ed Hellier, the promoter for Steel Domain Wrestling, told me that he went to an indie show that Buck was actually promoting, and it was going to be something like $10 for adults, and kids 5 and under get in free. So Ed knew a guy that was at this show, walks in, and Buck says to Buck's sitting there. Of course, he's at the till, and he said to the guy, "Well, it's going to be $10 for you, and I got to charge you $3 or $5 for your kid."
Oh, geez.
And so the guy says, "Well, wait a second. It's supposed to be kids 5 and under get in free." Yeah. And Buck's response was, "The house is a little light tonight, so I got to make up for it. So, be an extra $5.
So you're penalizing the people that are actually coming out to watch you."
But that was Buck.
He
was a piece of crap, and now he's where he deserves to be.
Yeah. Stellar individual. I want to ask you, because so many people look at the last couple of years of the AWA.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this. You felt that with the AWA, with what they had left, they still could have possibly made a run at it. Now, I'm looking, you were there, Larry Cameron, Derek Dukes, Ricky Rice, into the 90s. Do you think there would have been anything that Verne could have done? And I'm not saying to compete with Vince, because that train had long since left the station.
Right.
Do you think anything Verne did at that point would have actually saved the AWA, or at that point was it over?
I agree with you, because I watched a lot of your podcasts with you two guys and with George. I agree with you. Even if he had taken on Hogan and gave him it wasn't going to happen.
Right.
The bottom line is the country, things were evolving. Verne wasn't evolving. No, I don't think it would have changed anything. I think that the AWA had ran its course, and it was a shame, because I hated to see it go, because it was my childhood dream. And
absolutely.
Would I have loved to get another year or two where I think we would have got the straps? Yeah, of course. But I think that it just ran its course, and unfortunately, Verne was too old to evolve with it. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe had it been years back, because Verne was such a genius at one time.
He was.
I think he could have figured it out, but he was at this point. He was just too old to figure. And let's truth be told, there was Watts and there was all these other guys.
There you go.
Money talks, and Vince had money, and he closed it all down.
Yeah, I don't think any way Vince was going to be derailed by anybody, by any promoter.
It was going to happen.
It was inevitable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was over.
And I think, when you're talking about it, it's not necessarily that he was a good promoter. I just think that he was a good businessman and saw something that nobody else could. And I think we saw that there were times where, trying to work with several parts of the NWA and and working with all these different territories to put together these shows, it just didn't work. Let me ask you, Mike, you've had we've talked about, your AWA, your, WCW, kind of everything that you've done. Is there a certain part of your career that you would consider your favorite, or if you could go back and like highlight one period of time, what would it be?
I would say that, if I had to highlight something, to me, the first run in Puerto Rico with Rick, because we were making $1,000 a week. That territory was only 2 hours long. So you could leave at 6:30 at night. You'd better go to the beach, go to the gym, take a nap, go to the territory, go to the match, do your show, come back, still have time to go out and party. It was just paradise. That was probably my favorite time. But also when Tom and I were in WCW as Disorderly Conduct, and then Texas Hangmen, that was a special time too, because Tom was a great partner. I've got a thing to tell that's real quick.
Absolutely.
All these people who think wrestling is not that hard sometimes, these teeth, Rey Mysterio knocked all my front teeth out in a match with Eddie Guerrero, and thanks to him, I've got brand new teeth. that I got. It was in Rome, Georgia. We were wrestling. He flew over and he hit me with a flying forearm, knocked all my teeth down. And then the next day I had to go to Atlanta and get new teeth, and WCW paid for it. And $5,000 later, I've got brand new teeth. So yeah, thank you, Ray. But that just shows you how hard it is. Like literally, I went to the ring that night not thinking anything, and the next day I was getting, all my teeth were getting pulled.
That's another bone of contention. That's a whole other show about the people who denigrate wrestling.
It's hard.
And you hear it. I've heard it for 50, 60 years. Oh, they know how to fall. But you know what? And like we talked about earlier on, just get in there and run the ropes for a minute.
Thank you.
And the guys, the big tough football players and what have you that went out to Verne's training never made it past the first set of Hindu squats. They were gone. So you're talking to a couple of guys here who have nothing but respect for everything that you did.
100%. 100%.
Yeah. One other thing I'd like to say about AWA and WWE, we talked about the ending.
Yeah.
When we were doing both TVs, we saw, us job guys, we saw a big difference where we knew things were changing. Because when we would do AWA TV, it was pretty much Greg running it all. We'd go to WWF, and there'd be all these agents behind the scene. I mean, Arnold Skolin was doing our payouts. You'd have Tony Gurria. You'd have Rene Goulet. You'd have Chief J. Strongbow. All these guys helping organize everything in the TV. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely.
We had a full catered buffet. I'd be sitting in the buffet area, and I'd see Ultimate Warrior, Randy Savage, and Hulk Hogan, Don Morocco, Bob Orton. I mean, all these guys. And then when I come to Verne's show, you'd see, not a stellar of stars. We truly knew things were going to change. All of us job guys, we knew that the WWE was going to be the next thing because it was so superior in the later years.
Right.
Thing was a superior product in the earlier years, but at that point, Vince had dialed it in.
Well, and Mike, Verne had tried everything at that point. I mean, when he left the small studio in Minneapolis,
yes,
and first went out to Atlantic City, and then he went to the Showboat with the intent of competing with Vince on the level that this is Hollywood stuff. This is we're not in a small studio arena anymore. We're as glitzy and glamorous as the WWF, but it came off even then as looking kind of like a cheap imitation, because I by that point Vince had put the nail in everybody's coffin.
Yes, and do you remember at the end they even did that thing where they had like a simulated audience?
Oh
my God!
The green screen.
We weren't, for whatever reason, we weren't on that. But God, that was cringeworthy.
Well, and when it gets to the point where Jake Milliman, God bless him, is pulling a turkey off a pole, and that's your one of your main events in the Team Challenge series, you're in deep shit.
But I have to say something about that. We were part of, what was Nabisco's team that we were a part of? What was it called?
Oh God,
Blitzers or some shit or whatever.
Yeah, something.
Whatever it was. we won that because of Jake Milliman.
Yes.
I'm still waiting for my share of that damn $1 million that we were presented that day. I have a feeling I'm going to be waiting a long time.
I think so. You may want to, find another source of income.
Yeah.
I don't think the pasteurized one over there in Wisconsin, the milkman, is going to be coming up with any.
I check my mail every day, and Verne's check still isn't coming for that $1 million. Whatever.
Well, that'll be bouncing over to you any day now. But
yeah.
Mike, in following up here, and actually, this is probably the way we will wrap it up. I look at your career, and the term enhancement talent and jobbers and whatever else is tossed around a lot.
Yeah.
I think the general wrestling population, especially younger guys who all of a sudden they're internet experts because they read some terminology on the web, they may look at a Rick Gantner or a Mike Richards or whatever as this blip on the radar enhancement guy. And we've talked. I think you're a hell of a lot better than that, and a shining light, certainly in the last couple of years of the AWA. So, given that, how do you want to be remembered? If you look back on your career and somebody goes and finds a legitimate, accurate story of pro wrestling, how do you want to be seen?
I would say I wouldn't want to be seen as a journeyman, jobber, enhancement guy, because I feel we did more. I mean, we were champions at USWA. We were champions in Puerto Rico. I had 12 tours of Japan. I've been all over Europe. I mean, I did a lot, that people wouldn't know about.
Absolutely.
But at the same time, I'm well aware I was not a household name and I was not a top guy. I would just like to be known as a guy who was a really good hand that never, whether it was 200 people or 20,000 people, always gave his 100% effort, which I did, and always tried to respect my opponent and try to have the best match I could and try to, just make it solid and keep the psychology but make sure that nobody got hurt. So I feel like I was just a really good hand that always, I mean, I wrestled so many guys in every territory. I feel like I just like to be remembered as a guy that was a really good hand and someone who always respected the opponents.
I don't think you could ask for anything more. I think that's a tremendous legacy.
Yeah, and I think not only that, Mike, I think having people hear you tell your story and everything that you've done, and I think I hope that those that maybe don't know go back and look and really take a look at your career, because the way that you've laid out the last 2 weeks, I don't know about you, Mick, but I've loved like every minute of this, and that's complete.
Thanks.
That's completely a shoot. That this has been just so much fun. And again, I've told you, Mike, that you are gonna always be like somebody that's always going to be synonymous with one of my favorite moments in pro wrestling. My first ever card.
Your first match, yeah.
Yeah,
my first card, yeah, that's great.
My first card. So you like this just. It kind of just humanizes everything, right? Because I think you guys talked about wrestling having a bad rap. Like this humanizes it as well. And when you hear it, there are just so many good people that I feel maybe don't get the due respect that they should. And Mike, I really hope that people listen to this and they understand everything that you've done with and for the business.
Oh, that's awesome. I appreciate that. Me and Mick have a lot of history too.
Oh, we do.
The last time I saw Mick.
Oh, we do? Was that a question or a statement, Mick? Oh, I don't know.
Remember the AWF, I think. Was that our last?
Absolutely.
Seen you.
I forgot about that. Yeah, the AWF. And that's
part of that. You and Terry Taylor doing the announcing was so great. And that, I think, was the last time I saw Mick in person. But thank you guys so much for having me on here. It's been great. Your AWA podcast is tremendous. When I drive to do my appraisals, I listen to you guys. You guys are tremendous, and I can't wait to see what you two do together. It's gonna be cool.
Well, I really appreciate that, and we're shooting here when we say that you have our utmost respect.
Thank you. Awesome.
I could have done without that, that shit story when you shit your pants, but neither here nor there. I mean, Ric Flair one time on a national pay-per-view or Clash of Champions, he was wearing his pink tights into the ring, his pink shorts. And somebody body slammed him, and you mentioned, and the camera zoomed right in.
Shit happens.
Yeah, there you go.
All right, that'll do it. All right, enough of the potty mouth, Mike.
Well,
see what you did there?
Mick brought it up, not me.
Oh God, yeah. Well, again, this program has been the shits. I really appreciate your time, Mike. Take it easy, buddy.
Thank you guys so much for it, and I hope that we get a lot of views, and I hope that people enjoy it. It's been a pleasure.
Hell of a job. Thank you, buddy.
Thank you, Mike. And I'm going to take him out of the stream, but don't go anywhere, Mike, because we'll chat to you after we get done here. Kind of taking care of the business. Mick, that was great, man. I when we first did it, and we were doing the first week, and you're like, okay, we're going to wrap it up, and we got lucky in terms of cutting it into 2 parts. Like that is the stuff that I feel people want to hear. Like that's just me. Like I love hearing those stories because there's so many things that even if you read them, to hear them, it gives a completely different context when you hear somebody talk about it firsthand.
First of all, Mike, on a personal level is one hell of a guy. I mean, he always was.
He seems like such a good dude. He's instantly turned into one of my favorites, and I'm glad that I can now call him one of my friends.
And what he said at the very end, Chris, how much better could it be than to say, I want to be remembered as a good hand who made my opponents look good. I didn't hurt anybody in the ring.
Yes.
I mean, that's what it's all about. And I'm so glad that we had him on the show. And you talk about parts 1 and 2. I get the feeling we could go to part 10 with Mike Moran. Just a great storyteller and a great guy. And so glad we had him. And I hope the people appreciate what they really heard here from Mike.
Yeah.
And his career extended far, far beyond what I thought it did.
Mm-hmm.
I knew of him and about him and worked with him. But, man, some of those stories about Puerto Rico and the colognes and what have you, fascinating stuff.
Yeah, and you and I, he was just so candid and open and so natural.
Yeah.
So natural. And I said on Twitter, who would have thought that a guy named Killer would have been such a great communicator and could be such a storyteller? Yeah. And hopefully you guys have enjoyed it. Want to go ahead and get to some business here, Mick. We want to tell everybody that you can catch us on all your platforms, all your favorite platforms. We know YouTube's really popular. We love it. Apple Podcast, iTunes, Spotify, Pandora, Google, Amazon. I don't know. Maybe we're on MySpace. I don't know. Maybe we're, your favorite song on MySpace. I don't know. But check us out pretty much everywhere on social media. We're trying to be everywhere that you want to be. Also want to thank Soda Stick as well. It's the home of AWA Unleashed merchandise. If you see something and it's not Soda Stick and it doesn't have the Soda Stick logo, it's not legit. We've had people that have tried to bootleg, but go to sodastickco.com. You can get your t-shirt, your personalized hoodies. Again, sodastickco.com. AWA Unleashed podcast. The hoodie is actually kind of cool because you can put your name, your gimmick right there, and it's great. We've got some new t-shirts that are coming up once the first run of the white ones sell out. So we might be sold out of them, but if not, you might want to get it fairly soon. Want to thank 7th Avenue Pizza as well. The funny thing is, Mick, with 7th Avenue Pizza, I had somebody actually ask me, how many times have I spilled on the show between the drinks and the pizza? And I'm like, it's too many. Because I love 7th Avenue Pizza so much that I like to take it with me on my clothes.
You have spilled pizza.
Yes.
You have spilled soda. Mm-hmm. You have spilled coffee. You have probably tripped over your cat's litter box. You have your wife's expensive Persian rug. You have done pretty much everything there is to do. Yeah, and you have spilled the beans on many an occasion about things that maybe,
Oh, well, spill the beans. Okay.
Just saying.
Just saying. Okay.
Hey, for the people that are watching the show right now, first of all, I did a poll or a survey on the Slick Mick Old School Wrestling page. Mm-hmm. And I said, tell us what you want to see more of, less of, whatever on the podcast, see and hear. The response has been tremendous. And believe me, and Chris has said this many times, we listen to what you're saying. We take into account your ideas and your suggestions, so keep them coming.
Yeah, we've got some ideas and some things we're going to incorporate. I'm kind of excited about some of these new things that we're going to be able to incorporate because they're going to be a little bit different. But I think you guys are really going to like it. We just got to flush out a few things. But I think there's enough meat on the bone there, Mick, that I feel like some of the things that we can do are going to be absolutely great. All right. So that being said, we've got about 4 minutes here. Let's go ahead and get let's go ahead and first of all, if you've ordered a t-shirt, we've told you, go ahead and send us your pictures, send us, just an idea, you wearing it or whatnot. And here is Scott Jameson from Bloomington, Minnesota. There he is wearing the AWA Unleashed t-shirt, and he's got the AWA World Championship belt right there. So there he is right there. Again, you can send it to Mick at mickkarch@gmail.com, or I don't know, can they put it on the Slick Mick page? I know that we've got potentially a brand new Facebook page that's going to be coming out, but we're still flushing out the details on that. But if you've got a picture of you wearing your AWA swag, give us your name, give us your hometown, and even your favorite AWA wrestler. Just let us know, and we'll get you on the show. That being said, I think we got the shout outs here, Mick, and then we're done. Let's take it on.
I want to give a shout out to an old friend of mine, Ken Jugan. Ken, who wrestled as Lord Zoltan years ago, one of the early face paint guys in the wrestling business, had an opportunity to see Ken in Waterloo just recently. Talk about an old school guy, listens to the podcast regularly, just a big, big fan and a great friend. So, Jugan, best to you.
All right, and mine's going to go out to Brian Huff, who I've gotten a chance to know via Facebook. And be aware for Brian, because Brian may have something for us that I know that it's currently in the work. It may have actually gone live by the time this actually post, because I believe this is airing on August 16th is the drop date. So just want to thank Brian for his willingness to pitch in on a couple of things. So Brian, brother, my shout out goes for you. And that being said, again, follow us on all of our social media platforms, and especially on YouTube, guys. Like I cannot stress enough, subscribe on YouTube. Just go to Chris Tubbs, my page, or AWA Unleashed, because if you subscribe, you rate, review, you comment, that helps us grow. And as we continue to grow, we can continue to do more things, including more live shows. We've got one coming up in just a little less than a month in Fergus Falls as part of Below Zero Wrestling. So we've got that. Got a whole lot more. And Mick, it's been fun, man. I had fun, and I don't know what we're going to do next week. I know we've got a few ideas in mind, and I guess we'll figure it out as the time goes. But we got a lot of good things, and I hope people stick around for the direction of AWA Unleashed. I
believe they will, and we have gotten positive feedback. You know, we've had some changes just recently, and that has kind of spurred us into moving into different directions a little bit. Hang in there with us. You're not going to be disappointed. It's going to be a fun ride, everybody.